Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast which will explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our fourth season, we're looking at Kenneth Branagh's 2011 film, Thor. I'm Matthew Fox from the Superhero Ethics Podcast.
And I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And today we're talking about minute 82, which begins with everyone looking at the strange cloud formation and ends with Thor preparing to make his stand with his Asgardian friends. Joining us on the show today, as will be all this week, we have Robin Burdge from the Karate Kid Minute and Travis Bowe from Real Comic Heroes, Marvel Events Timeline, and the Watchmen Minute. For both of you, I'm curious, obviously there's a lot of great geeky minute you're into. Tell us about you and Marvel. How did you get into Marvel? Were you comic book fans beforehand? What's your kind of Marvel journey been like?
I believe it started with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And then I started stealing comics from my brother. And I got a bit to Spider-Man and X-Men, I think, was my main deal. It wasn't until later that, especially when the MCU stuff came along, that I started checking out Thor. I never really was very interested in much cosmic stuff.
Are you then excited for the yellow spandex X-Men of many of our childhoods to be coming back?
It has to. It has to happen. So, yes.
Travis, what about yourself?
Kind of similar. Got into Marvel through Spider-Man and then, X-Men in the early 90s there. And then just stayed with comics, since I was a kid. Mostly a Marvel guy. There for a while I got into DC, but the last couple of years I've really checked out of DC. Mm-hmm. But it's stuff like this, Thor, Fantastic Four, all the original Marvel stuff. It really wasn't for me. These Thor and Fantastic Four were my dad's comics. I just could not care about this stuff. But then the last couple years, I got more interested in it. And then I don't know if you guys have heard of the podcast My Marvelous Year, where they go through the Marvel universe, starting with Fantastic Four in 1961, and they just pick key moments for every year of Marvel, and they'll talk about certain issues and everything. So I started with that with Marvel Unlimited, the comic app, and just started reading everything. And I decided to not keep up with that podcast because from that time, literally started reading everything that Marvel released in a given year in release order. So I've been doing that for the last 3 years. And have read a lot of Thor. Thor is now one of my favorites. I love Thor. I love Doctor Strange. Stuff like that I never would have read before. Some of the Iron Man stuff has been really fun. But I've made it up to 1968. But
nice.
Great.
Just reading everything that Marvel has put out as if it's coming out each issue. I'll read Fantastic Four, then do Captain America, then Iron Man, then, down the list, and then start back over once I get to the end of that month's run.
Nice.
I can't wait to get your impressions of the Iron Man runs in the 70s because there were some really fantastic storylines in there.
On my Superhero Ethics podcast, we've been doing a series on comic book history, and we're just kind of we did an episode on the Golden Era, an episode on the Silver Era. So I'd love to get you on at some point to talk about some of your observations there. We'll get a lot more about Thor, of course, just after this.
You want to get in on the conversation about everything going on this week with the battle in Puente Antiguo with the Destroyer, with like-minded Marvel fans over on Facebook? Well, just join our Facebook group, the Marvel Movie Minute Podcast Executive Lounge. Go to truestory.fm/Marvel Movie Minute and click on the link for the social of your choice.
All right, so we now see that our heroes, as well as pretty much everyone in this town, is rushing out to see this cloud. And maybe I am too much a child of 1980s Cold War action movies, but is that supposed to look like a mushroom cloud? Because that's certainly what I got.
It sure does.
Good call. Yeah.
I suppose they needed to do something, but I don't know why it seems like Midgard only in this movie is the place where there is strange things going on in the atmosphere when the Bifrost comes down, because it never happens again.
Right.
Like we never see, even on Jotunheim, when they come down to Jotunheim, we're not seeing these sorts of cloud formations in this film. It's only here in this film on Midgard that we have such drastic things happening in the sky when the Bifrost is opening up to send something down. So it's really strange. And yes, like, why is it this giant mushroom cloud thing here? Because it just, I guess it's meant to look like a threat, right? I mean, that's my impression.
Yeah, I think they're too far. They need the townspeople to be worried, but they're too far away to see the destroyer and know that that's a threat. So I think it's just to create the panic while it's still, I don't know, 5 miles away.
Well, they hadn't really defined the Bifrost travel look perfectly. I mean, they were obviously doing it in this film, but I feel like later, as you get them popping in and out a lot more just effectively, like, I mean, even when you see, Loki arriving on Jotunheim earlier in the film, it's just like this beam that kind of comes down. And I can't help but wonder, like, if they had just done a cool beam, like a rainbow beam that shoots down, would that have been enough to kind of draw everybody's attention? Or did it just need to be something so big just to get all the townsfolk out into the street?
Well, and at least with this one, since I think we can all guess what's coming down now. And I wonder if the combination of it, like, this is not a person, this is a much larger entity, but also, as we've just seen, it is not Heimdall in charge anymore. This is Loki opening up the Bifrost. And so we've had a couple of weird things happening before as well, but I don't know if there's some idea that, like, this is a little different. And Travis, I was actually going to ask because you were talking about all the comic book stuff you've been reading, and I know Thor has come in pretty late, so you have not read too much of that, but in the comics, is there kind of like these storm type things that happen every time an Asgardian comes to Midgard? Not
that I've noticed. There might be, motion lines indicating the idea that there's some teleportation kind of happening, but nowhere to this level of, changing weather patterns or anything like that.
Yeah. And so then we cut to S.H.I.E.L.D., and they're not watching from a distance. They're kind of right there. And I like the way they set that up with, you see the coffee cup, and don't put it in a dashboard. Come on. It's always going to spill.
This is Jurassic Park though, right?
There you go. It spills. And I love also the scene of like the sand, like, it's blowing because all this, you get the sense that clearly they're at ground zero in a way that everybody else isn't.
Yeah.
Did you guys spot the continuity error with the coffee cup?
No.
When you obviously see it tip over, and then they cut to you're kind of seeing from Coulson and the other guy,
Sitwell.
You see from their perspective, and when you see the destroyer, and at one point the coffee cup is standing up, and then another point it's tipped over. So just a little fun
right.
error in coffee there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's also a different type of continuity error, but when our heroes just ran out of Smith Motors to kind of see this formation, if you look at the streets of Puente Antiguo, they're completely dry, and just pay attention to them when we return to Puente Antiguo a little later. So we'll get to that later in this minute.
Yeah. And so here, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. is already there because this is where the Warriors 3 and Sif came down. So I think the implication here, we've had, the Bifrost opening up all over New Mexico, or at least within this general area. But now, am I right that the destroyer is basically landing just pretty much in the exact same spot?
And actually, the more I think about it and the more I look at the landscape here, I think that this is actually where Thor landed too. And we were asking, like, did they never find where Thor landed? I think they did. I just don't think they realized it until the Warriors 3 and Sif landed on the exact same spot. And it makes me wonder if Heimdall very specifically pointed the Bifrost to land in the same spot that he had sent Thor, for them to kind of get to the same place. Like, it's an odd, I don't know. The ground is just so flat. There are some kind of track marks around it. It does make me feel like, I can see Jane and Darcy and Eric driving in the dark across this more so than the rough landscape where Mjolnir landed.
I guess it would make sense for there to be, like, this is the Midgard doorway.
We call them the Bifrost junctions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. My memory is of the ground being a little bit more hilly where Thor landed. Like, it wasn't quite the over the hill effect you get with where Mjolnir is, but so it doesn't feel the same to me. But granted, we saw one at day, one at night, so it may well be. And certainly that would make a lot more sense if this is kind of like just like the edge of that cliff in Jotunheim. There's kind of there's a bus stop, and you can get the bus to go other places, but this is the first place it stops.
Yeah, I always assume where Mjolnir lands, it caused like a crater of some sort, you know?
Yeah.
That's also true.
It wasn't hilly.
Well, I think, part of it is all the Mjolnir stuff was filmed in California in the mountains out there. And all of this stuff out in the desert was actually filmed out in the desert of New Mexico. So yeah, they just never quite match up, which is maybe that's also part of the reason, which we didn't really talk about way back when, Matthew. Maybe that's just why Mjolnir had to land in a different spot from Thor, because they knew they were going to be filming it in a different state.
Wait, Andy, I know that I am not as well versed in movie making as you are, but I always assume that every single frame is completely chosen because that's the director's artistic vision. Practical effects have nothing to do with this, right? Don't tell me there's no Santa Claus here.
That's right. I know. I'm the worst parent. The worst parent.
So, and Darcy does have that great moment of is someone else coming, which it just kind of, I think it's such a great way of like summing up everyone's anticipation and fear. And then, of course, we just get this great shot of the clouds of sand parting, and there's the destroyer.
Such just a fantastic way that they created that imposing figure for the film. I really love what they did with it.
I absolutely love the destroyer. It's just rendered perfectly here, and they just capture it perfectly on film here compared to the original like Jack Kirby design of it. It's just so awesome. I love the way they use it in this movie.
Well, and they do. And to your point, yeah, I mean, they really did a great job of that translation, right? From the comics to this. Like, I mean, it really looked like this in the comics effectively. And so I love the way that they use it. This is a creation that I really wish that they would continue to find ways to bring back in later films, because I think it's such a creatively crafted piece with its kind of the body, kind of those bands that like the armor bands that make it up that it can manipulate. I think it's really cool.
I do wish that you'd get more of a sense. I know you guys will get it next week when Thor is talking, to Loki through the destroyer, but I wish you got more of a sense that someone was piloting the destroyer, for lack of a better word, because this just seems like it's just a robot, sent to, I don't know, to kill Thor, I guess. Whereas like in the comics, you need a soul. A person needs to inhabit the destroyer. Sometimes it's Loki. At one point in the issue that this kind of sequence of the movie kind of takes after, it's actually Sif, Lady Sif, who is piloting the destroyer because Thor has been depowered because, he angered Odin. So Odin sends him to Earth to, same thing as this movie, basically, just to teach him a lesson, takes away his powers. And Sif and Balder go to the Norn Queen, who I wish was in this, these movies, to, they need some way to get to Thor. And she says, well, if you take the destroyer. And so she tries to reason with Thor and finds out once you're inhabiting the destroyer, you can't talk, you can't, reason, or and then she quickly loses control over the destroyer, and it almost kills Thor. And then that's when Odin, gives him back the power. So
as a comparison to something we were talking about yesterday, it's interesting the way that the destroyer is kind of built into this film. It is a little more the Ed 209.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as we'll talk about in the next minute, especially tomorrow, Loki gave it very specific instructions, but also said kind of, destroy everything. And I don't quite understand what its sort of operating matrix is here. And so, yeah, knowing that there was a person inside it would help give me a little bit more of a, because like it looks kind of cool while it's destroying the shield cars. And at first I was wondering, like, is it only destroying cars? Is it not destroying people? There is one shot we get as it's blowing things up of like 2 cars are blown up and then a person flies right into one of those people in the middle of an explosion. So it's the MCU PG-13. We're not going to focus on the people dying, but it's not protecting life by any means. But yeah, I just want to say also just about the reveal of it. This is something that I think we're seeing a lot more in action movies these days, but it's so effective, and I think they do it so well here. This shot is the first time we see the whole thing. You know, way back when, Andy, we talked about how, you know, when the destroyer destroys the frost giants, we just get like the torso up and it's in shadow. And then even later when Loki talks to it, now we get to see like the size of it compared to everything else in scale. And I just love that the way they use that technique.
Well, and also there's that fantastic shot from behind its shoulder as it's walking toward them. And what I love about it is that they actually built a very slight like wobble of the frame for every footstep just to make it really feel very heavy, like the whole ground is shaking with each footstep. Like it's just really fantastic the way they put that together.
Yeah, I love that feeling that you're riding on the destroyer's shoulder as it's approaching the shield agents.
Yeah. And they did have something for some of these shots, like a big 10-foot thing that they could move around. But I don't know. I'm not sure which one is the real one and which one are the CG creations.
I want that in my front lawn as a lawn ornament.
Yeah, I go a little crazy for Christmas decorations, and I had a Baby Yoda with a Santa hat. Now I really want a destroyer with a Santa hat. You know, that should be outside my house. And then, of course, we get into what one of my favorite little recurring bits, which is just how nonchalant S.H.I.E.L.D. and especially Coulson is, because his first reaction isn't, oh my God, it's a huge monster robot, or like, how did that? It's, all right, Stark, what are you doing now? And Sitwell is the exact same. And the way the two of them approach it, and then he just like, it's like he's giving a traffic citation, you know, like, I have to let you know, you're using unregistered weapons tech.
Yeah, the fact that he doesn't feel threatened by this at this point, I love how exasperated he is, how resigned he is. Like, I am just a cog on the wheel that is Tony Stark. So this is probably something so, you know, I mean, as far as he knows, there's some dude in there. There's some sweaty dude in that, like some, you know, like Jeff Bridges or somebody in there that he's just like, all right, you've got take a minute and just think you need to stop. But yeah, little as you know, there is no person in there.
Well, that plays so well because as its face starts opening up, he's like, all right, here we go. It's like, yep, the suit's going to come off and we're going to have a conversation now. I love the way that plays, you know, because the way that fire like boils out of its chest and like bursts through its face is just so cool.
And one thing we've been talking about a lot over this season is this version of S.H.I.E.L.D. feels very different than it did in Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, which is so far the only things we've gotten as well. And in Hulk. But we didn't get S.H.I.E.L.D. in Hulk much, did we? A little bit, yeah.
S.H.I.E.L.D. tech.
Yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. tech.
Yeah.
But
the Army was using, well, some of it was Stark tech.
Tech. I don't know. Yeah, I think that the S.H.I.E.L.D. elements were integrated after the fact because that was universal.
Right. But my only point being, I now feel like I understand a little more where S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming, is that they're so frustrated about dealing with Stark that now they have people who actually they can boss around some, that maybe they're enjoying that a little more. Although the thing that got me here is a huge metal person thing appears. It's not a weapon. I don't see any weapon. I mean, he's got these tiny little spikes that we see in the over-shoulder shot. But like, why does he jump to this is unregistered weapon tech?
Well, I feel like that came from Iron Man 2, right? You know, you're wearing this giant suit. You're using it as a weapon because, I mean, that was the whole thing. The government was trying to get the suits away from Tony because it was, as far as they were concerned, it was weapons technology that they wanted to control. And so that's my sense of it is that you're wearing a giant metal suit, obviously much larger than an actual person is. Therefore, there must be elements in it that are weapons. Otherwise, why are you walking around in a giant metal suit?
That's fair.
And also, like, if he's landing and causing, like, basically a thunderstorm when he lands, I mean, there is a bit of a threat there that they need to contain.
It's just funny because I know, like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there were many times where, like, they were like, we don't want to assume you're hostile. And then until they start shooting, and then Coulson's like, okay, you're hostile, fine. And when you brought this up, we then get the eyes open and the fire begins. And I love this shot because it's not like a laser. It's not a heat ray. You can see that there's an actual fire, like, starting to burn. And to me, it just so captures this idea of, like, old style, like, magic dragons world with sci-fi.
It's like he's like unleashing the full force of Asgard.
Yeah.
Like in this one beam. I love the awesome power on display here too. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about, like, you know, Cold War hysteria. I mean, this thing reminds me of old school War of the Worlds. You know, when that thing fires, and the metallic ring that it has when it fires out, it really makes me think of that the old War of the Worlds.
Yeah, that's great, Paul.
And how they sounded.
I love that effect. You see the fire rise through the chest, you know, up through the throat and then out the face. I don't remember when he took on the Frost Giants if you saw that effect of the fire. The fire rises.
Oh, yeah.
Or not.
Wrong show.
Yeah, sorry.
So then we cut back to Puente Antiguo, and we're on the streets. And Andy, what did you kind of notice when you looked at the streets as we're seeing them here?
Well, as you look at the streets, now they're all wet. The water truck has come through and done a pass wetting the streets down because, you know, it makes it look a little better on film. But it's like, why? I mean, we just had, even at the beginning of this minute, when they run out, all the streets were dry. And, you know, part of me wonders, maybe they needed to create this cloud effect in the sky also to just show, you know what? We wet the streets there. We need to do something to make it seem like, you know, some moisture came down on everything.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my no prize for that one.
I've been to Arizona a few times, and I've certainly experienced, like, you get 10 minutes of rain like almost every morning and it's gone. So maybe they just had a quick little rain shower.
Mm-hmm. It was like a 5-second rain shower.
Yeah.
I mean, random weather effects. Again, like, you know, Loki doesn't quite understand the Bifrost. He's doing some weird weather things without meaning to. But we then here's the question I have. So we established that, like, the cloud was way, way off in the distance. And then we cut back to Puente Antiguo, and the people are running around, and, you know, Thor says, you know, Jane, you have to leave, which, what about Darcy and Eric? We'll get into that for a second. But my first question is, do they know what's happening? Like, does Thor just guess that it's the destroyer, or do all these people see this destruction? Like, I'm very unclear on that.
There's a fireball off in the horizon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't play the minute in here. I don't know if you hear any kind of explosion, but yeah, if you, like, second 51, you can see a bright little fireball.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Out in the desert.
Yeah, I had to, like, pause it and go back to really scrutinize it because there's, like, a tree dangling that's kind of even almost hiding the fireball.
Yeah. Well, there's, like, rumbly, like, it's hard to tell. Is it the explosions coming from the destroyer? Is it lightning in the distance? But yeah, there's something that people are looking at there. But again, it is awfully far away.
Yeah.
So I mean, everyone in town is getting in a panic about something that's pretty far away.
They're overreacting. They should be standing around going, well, I hope that doesn't come our way.
At least Thor might know. Like, Thor would probably know, okay, a little bit of fire, something just came from Asgard. I can put 2 and 2 together. This is the destroyer. But yeah, everyone else. And then, of course, we end with Volstagg having this great, his little moment of, oh, Thor's going to fight with us. I, as a rotund redhead, I am just always going to be sad about what Volstagg is, just this walking joke. Last week, I got into this about his moment of, you know, like, well, but I'm eating everything. You know, and here again, it's just like, I got nothing.
I honestly thought at first I had to kind of scroll back a little bit. I thought he said the fool is going to fight with us, as if, like, to question the fact that he's mortal and he's just going to do it anyway. You know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Yeah, that would fit better. That'd fit better.
Have you guys talked about this town much at all? I mean, is this a real town that they're filming in, or is this all like sets, exteriors built?
100% fake.
That's okay. I was going to say it seems to be in the middle of nowhere.
It is. It's built in an old western town in New Mexico. They changed all the buildings from 1800s buildings to modern buildings, which is why it has I struggle with it, because it always feels like it's in the middle of nowhere. It's a town that looks like it has maybe 200 people tops, even though it says the population's over 2,000. It always seems way too busy. Like, I have a lot of issues with it. I love the look of it. It looks great. It just never quite feels like something that realistically should be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually host another podcast I don't mean to plug, but it's for the show Superman and Lois, and they have the main street of Smallville in that town, and it really is just this one main street of exteriors, and it's all businesses, and just like, yeah, I guess this is the whole town, right? Sure.
Yep, exactly.
I do just want to say, if you played a drinking game while listening to these podcasts, of every time I found a way to sneak in a reference to one of my other podcasts, your liver would be in trouble. So please, shameless plug away.
Superman and Lois TV Talk. Thank you.
There you go.
There it is.
There you go. There you go.
Did you talk about the billboard, though? I'm sure you've talked about the billboard.
Oh, yeah.
Land of Enchantment.
Why is there text blotted out?
I don't know. We weren't sure if that was something that they did after the fact, like they needed to come in and say, oh, we can't have that information there. And like there's an 800 number clearly, or if it was that way and they just decided to leave it, like it's so strange.
I think I remember hearing you theorize that they were going to fix it in post, like add a real number, or a fake number, but make it look real. But then they just didn't. But yeah, it does look weird that it's a redacted. But then I love the thing at the bottom, journey into mystery. So
absolutely,
that's fitting.
While we're talking about the town, this is Main Street, so we are on the main street of this town at first up here at Smith Motors. The next street down is Mesa, which we can finally see, and we can finally see the world famous Arturo's Food and Pharmacy across the street from Isabella's. That's Arturo. Was somebody that I believe that they had cast with some lines at one point, but never ended up. Technically, he is still there. Arturo the Grocer / Townie. Martin Edward Andazola plays him, but he ended up getting uncredited. I don't know if that's because anything he did was cut, or if he's just now one of these random people running around in the background. But technically, there is an Arturo, and that's his shop.
The things that stand out to me in this minute, or anytime I watch this sequence of the movie, is this gray Ford Focus hatchback that at the start of the minute, it's like turning kind of in front of them, or where you're seeing the mushroom cloud. Yeah. And then at the end of this minute, it's maybe it turned around and now it's heading back towards them. So it just stands out because it's the same car used twice.
Puente Antiguo, Thor, when he left to, when he departed from his friends to go find Mjolnir, it takes forever for him to leave town. And then he finally just wanders back into the pet shop. It's like, what has he been doing for the past 10 minutes? I like to think that Puente Antiguo is one of those spots that you see in movies where you leave, but then you're walking right back into it. It's like, I thought I just left this town.
Oh boy.
There's a welcome to Night Vale aspect to it. It's just got all the kind of
I can't get out.
Weird things.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's about all for this minute. We'll have a lot more about the Destroyer next minute. So from both of you, we heard about one thing. What's another thing you want to plug or let people know about? Robin, let's actually talk about Superman and Lois. What you got going on there?
Oh, well, I think I've talked enough about it, but we covered the first season, and it's going to be back in January to talk about season 2. I'm really looking forward to it. It's me and my friends Derek and Frank, and we loved Smallville back in the day, and we're just kind of continuing the Superman love with Superman and Lois. Finally, a Superman live action TV show where Superman is Superman, and he's not played by a complete tool.
Yeah, I am once again, one more shameless plug, but it will long be over by the time this comes out, but I did an episode by episode review of season 2 of The Witcher, and when I'm recording this now, I've just finished our episode by episode of season 1, and I'm just watching Henry Cavill, and how could anyone think this person should be Superman and not Batman? I don't get it. He's so good at dark and gritty. Anyway, so Travis, what about yourself?
My newer podcast is Marvel Events Timeline, and over there, myself and Brian Lockhart, fellow Movies by Minute host, we go through the Marvel Universe one event at a time in the comics, and we're starting with Timely Comics, where it all started with the meeting of Namor the Submariner and the Human Torch, because that's really kicked things off, and we found out by doing this show that their meeting in Marvel Mystery Comics number 9 is the first time any two characters from separate comic book stories had ever crossed paths. So in a sense, the shared universe started in that book. And that's, now we've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and everyone's trying to build a shared universe. And I like that it all kind of started with Namor and the Human Torch. So,
and did you say that was the first time in comics, or the first time in? Because I thought there'd been some like Superman Batman crossovers way back in the 40s.
Superman and Batman don't meet until like 1956 or 57 in the pages of a comic. I think they had met up on a radio play or something like that.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay,
but in the pages of a comic, it started in Timely. So
awesome. Well, yeah, definitely two things worth checking out. Thank you both so much. I'm really excited for the rest of the week. Andy, as always, thank you. And to our fans, you make this possible. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is One Last Ride by Martin Puringer. Find the show at truestory.fm. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.